Lucky American coins. The 1973 United States 1-cent coin is one of the many Lincoln Memorial cents that can still attract collectors today, especially when a particular example has an unusual minting error, an exceptional grade, a rare planchet mistake, or another feature that separates it from the billions of ordinary examples produced during the same era. A normal 1973 Lincoln cent, however, is not a $281 million coin. That figure should not be presented as a verified market value or auction record. Available numismatic records show that ordinary 1973 cents are generally common, while genuinely unusual certified errors and exceptionally high-grade examples can bring substantially more than face value. For example, PCGS records a 1973 Philadelphia Lincoln cent weighing 3.11 grams, measuring 19 millimeters, having a plain edge, and being composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc. PCGS lists an auction record of $3,960 for a 1973 Philadelphia cent graded MS-67 plus red. The 1973 Lincoln cent is part of the famous Lincoln Memorial Cent series that began in 1959. The obverse carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the inscriptions "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date 1973. The reverse displays the Lincoln Memorial, surrounded by the inscriptions United States of America, 1 cent, and E Pluribus Unum. The obverse design was created by Victor David Brenner, whose Lincoln portrait had already been used on United States cents since 1909, while the memorial reverse was designed by Frank Gasparro and introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. For collectors, the date 1973 is important because the coin belongs to the copper era of the modern Lincoln cent. A standard 1973 cent weighs approximately 3.11 grams and has a diameter of approximately 19 millimeters. It is round and has a plain edge. Its traditional composition is 95% copper and 5% zinc. These specifications are extremely useful when checking a suspected error coin because weight, diameter, color, and metal composition can sometimes help distinguish a genuine mint error from damage that occurred after the coin left the United States Mint. The Philadelphia Mint produced 3,728,245,000 business strike 1973 Lincoln cents. The Denver Mint produced 3,549,576,588, while San Francisco produced 317,177,295 business strike cents, in addition to proof production. Those numbers demonstrate an important fact about the 1973 cent: the ordinary date itself is not rare. There were billions of examples made. Therefore, simply finding a 1973 penny does not automatically mean that the coin is worth hundreds, thousands, or millions of dollars. What can transform an ordinary cent into a collectible is a combination of condition, mint mark, variety, error type, preservation, authentication, and demand among collectors. A collector examining a 1973 cent should first determine whether the coin is a Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco issue. A 1973 Philadelphia cent normally has no mint mark. A 1973 D has a D mint mark representing the Denver Mint, while a 1973 S carries an S mint mark representing San Francisco. Mint marks can matter because production quantities and condition rarity differ between the three facilities. PCGS specifically notes that the 1973 S cent can be difficult to find in very high grades because many examples have planchet problems, contact marks, and other quality issues. The most important thing to understand about the phrase 1973 penny error is that not every unusual-looking coin is actually a mint error. Coins spend decades circulating in pockets, vending machines, cash registers, drawers, jars, and collections. During that time, they can be scratched, bent, stained, chemically altered, drilled, polished, squeezed, heated, struck by other objects, or damaged by machinery. Such post-mint damage usually does not carry the same premium as a genuine error that occurred while the coin was being manufactured. A genuine mint error is created during the minting process. The error can involve the planchette, dies, striking process, collar, alignment, or another stage of production. Collectors often pay more for dramatic errors because they are visually obvious and because authentic examples can be considerably scarcer than normal coins. The most important principle is that the value of an error is not determined simply by the word error. The specific error, severity, authenticity, condition, and market demand all matter. One of the most dramatic possibilities for a 1973 Lincoln cent is an off-center strike. An off-center error occurs when the blank planchette is not properly positioned between the dies when the coin is struck. Instead of receiving a centered design, the coin receives a design shifted toward one side. Part of the original blank can remain completely unstruck. The more dramatic the displacement, the more visually impressive the coin may become. A date that remains completely visible can be particularly desirable because it allows collectors to identify the coin easily. A small amount of off-center striking does not necessarily create a spectacularly valuable coin. A minor displacement may attract only a modest premium, especially if the coin is circulated or damaged. A major off-center strike can be more desirable, particularly when a substantial portion of the design is missing but the date and denomination remain identifiable. The market for error coins is highly dependent on the individual specimen, so a collector should not assume that every off-center 1973 cent is worth the same amount. Another potentially valuable error is a wrong planchette strike. This happens when a coin is struck on a blank intended for a different denomination or, in some cases, a different type of coin. A 1973 cent struck on a dime planchette would be particularly interesting because a normal 1973 cent weighs about 3.11 grams, while a standard-clad Roosevelt Dime planchette is substantially lighter. The resulting coin can have a smaller diameter and may show design elements extending beyond the available surface. Such a coin must be authenticated because unusual color, weight, or shape can also result from post-mint alteration. Contemporary collector references have documented significant premiums for authenticated 1973 wrong planchette examples, including a reported sale of a 1973 cent struck on a dime planchette for $26,400. This kind of result is exactly why collectors should be careful when they see online claims that a 1973 penny is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. A real auction result from a reputable auction house or a certified coin price record is fundamentally different from an internet listing that simply asks an enormous price. An owner can place a coin online for $281 million, $1 billion, or any other amount, but the asking price does not prove that anyone is willing. The $281 million figure associated with a 1973 1-cent coin should therefore be treated as an unverified promotional claim rather than a confirmed current market value. The available authoritative price and auction information does not support a $281 million valuation for an ordinary 1973 Lincoln cent. PCGS's documented auction record for the regular 1973 Philadelphia issue is $3,960 for an MS67 Plus red example, while documented error sales for 1973 cents can reach into the hundreds or thousands of dollars, and, for particularly important errors, substantially higher. This distinction is especially important for anyone making a YouTube video about coin collecting. It is perfectly reasonable to discuss a sensational $281 million claim as a claim, but it should not be described as an established sale unless there is reliable evidence of an actual completed transaction. A responsible coin video can say that some online sources or viral listings claim extraordinary values, while explaining that verified auction records are far lower for known 1973 Lincoln cents. That approach makes the content more credible and protects viewers from confusing asking prices with realized prices. The 1973 cent has a fascinating history because it was struck during a period when the United States Mint was producing enormous quantities of circulating cents. The Lincoln Memorial reverse had been introduced in 1959, replacing the wheat-ear reverse that had appeared on Lincoln cents from 1909 through 1958. Frank Gasparo's memorial design remained on the cent until 2008, when the reverse was changed to commemorate Lincoln's bicentennial before the current Union Shield reverse was introduced in 2010. During the early 1970s, the United States was experiencing economic changes that eventually contributed to major changes in coinage materials. Copper prices, inflation, and the economics of producing low-denomination coins were important considerations for the mint. The 1973 cent itself remained part of the traditional bronze composition, with 95% copper and 5% zinc. Later in the decade, the United States experimented with alternative compositions and eventually moved away from the traditional bronze composition for circulating cents in 1982. The weight of a 1973 cent is therefore one of the most useful identification tools. A normal specimen should be close to 3.11 grams. A coin that is dramatically lighter or heavier deserves additional examination, although a scale reading alone cannot prove an error. Circulated coins can lose small amounts of metal, and dirt or contaminants can affect readings. A collector should use an accurate digital scale with a suitable resolution and compare the coin's measurement with known specifications. A coin that weighs substantially less than expected can have several explanations. It might be damaged, corroded, clipped, filed, chemically altered, or struck on a different planchette. It could also be a counterfeit. Conversely, an unusually heavy coin may involve an unusual planchette, a foreign object attached to the coin, or simply an inaccurate scale. Professional authentication becomes especially important when the weight and dimensions strongly suggest a major mint error. The color of a 1973 cent can also provide clues. A freshly preserved copper cent can have a bright reddish appearance. Over decades, exposure to oxygen, moisture, chemicals, oils, and environmental conditions can cause the surface to darken. Professional grading services generally distinguish red, red-brown, and brown color designations on copper coins. A coin retaining strong original red color can be considerably more desirable in high grades than a heavily toned or circulated example. Condition is another major factor. Coin collectors commonly use the Sheldon numerical grading scale from 1 through 70. Circulated coins show varying degrees of wear, while uncirculated coins retain their original mint state. Within the uncirculated range, small differences in surface quality, strike, luster, color, marks, and overall eye appeal can create large differences in value. The difference between an ordinary circulated 1973 cent and a top-grade certified example can be dramatic. PCGS describes the normal 1973 Philadelphia cent as very common through many grades, with higher grades becoming progressively harder to locate. PCGS specifically states that MS-67 examples are much more difficult to find and that grades above MS-67 are rare. NGC's coin information likewise identifies the 1973 Philadelphia Lincoln cent as having a 3.11 gram weight, 19 mm diameter, plain edge, and a mintage of 3,728,245,000. Its census and price information demonstrate how certified examples become increasingly scarce as grades rise. The word mint mark is another important part of identifying the coin. On a 1973 Lincoln cent, the mint mark is located beneath the date and above the area near Lincoln's shoulder. If there is no mint mark, the coin is generally a Philadelphia issue. If there is a D, it is from Denver. If there is an S, it is from San Francisco. Collectors should examine the mint mark with magnification, especially because damage or alteration can make letters look unusual. A suspected double die is another feature that attracts attention. A double die is created during die production and can cause portions of the design to appear doubled. It is different from machine doubling, which can create a flat, shelf-like appearance during striking. These two conditions are often confused by inexperienced collectors. A genuine double die variety can be collectible, while ordinary machine doubling may carry little or no premium. The date 1973 itself should be examined carefully. Look at the digits under good lighting and magnification. Check whether there appears to be true doubling, unusual spacing, repunching, die cracks, die chips, or other unusual characteristics. However, a strange-looking digit is not automatically evidence of a rare variety. The coin should be compared against recognized variety references, or submitted to a specialist if the potential premium is substantial. Die cracks are another type of mint-made feature. A die can develop cracks as a result of stress during production. When a cracked die strikes coins, the crack can appear as a raised line on the finished coin. A die crack is not necessarily rare or highly valuable, but dramatic examples can attract collectors. A die chip can produce a raised blob or abnormal shape in a particular area of the design. A cut is another dramatic die-related feature. It generally occurs when a portion of the die face breaks away, leaving a raised, blank-looking area on the coin where the broken die section no longer strikes the design properly. Large cuts can be desirable to era collectors. Again, the exact value depends on the size, location, visibility, rarity, and condition of the coin. A struck-through error occurs when a foreign material comes between the die and planchette during striking. Depending on the material, the resulting coin can show an unusual depression, texture, or missing design element. Cloth, grease, wire, debris, or other materials can sometimes create recognizable struck-through effects. Authentication is important because scratches, corrosion, and environmental damage can produce somewhat similar appearances. A broad strike occurs when a coin is struck without proper containment by the collar. The resulting coin can spread outward and appear larger than a normal example. A broad strike can be an authentic mint error, but it should not be confused with a coin that has been physically flattened after leaving the mint. A clipped planchette is another error type. A blank can sometimes be improperly punched from the metal strip, resulting in a curved or straight section missing from the planchette. Genuine clips often have distinctive characteristics that help specialists determine whether they occurred before or during striking. Post-mint damage can imitate a clip, so professional examination may be necessary. A lamination error can occur when problems in the metal strip cause a layer of the planchette to separate or peel. On a copper alloy cent, a genuine lamination can appear as a thin section of metal separating from the coin. Collectors should distinguish this from corrosion or damage caused by environmental exposure. A die adjustment strike can show weak areas of design because the dies were adjusted or tested before production reached normal striking pressure. Such pieces can be collectible, although not every weakly struck coin is an error. Weakness can also result from worn dies, insufficient pressure, or other normal production factors. Multiple strikes are among the most dramatic mint errors. If a coin fails to eject properly and is struck again, the design can appear in several positions. In extreme cases, the coin can show spectacular overlapping or separated impressions. A documented 1973 D cent with a late-stage brokerage has sold for $1,020, illustrating how an unusual mint error can command a substantial premium over the value of an ordinary cent. Another documented 1973 D error involved a 50% off center strike and sold for $79 in 2023, while a 4% misaligned obverse die example sold for $73 in 2024. A defective planchette example sold for $119 in 2026. These actual results demonstrate the wide range of values possible for error coins, and also demonstrate why it is misleading to assign one universal value to every 1973-era cent. The $281 million number is therefore not a reliable, current market value for a normal 1973 cent. If a collector actually owns a remarkable 1973 era, the correct process is to document the coin carefully, weigh it, photograph it, compare it with established era references, and consider professional authentication. The value should then be estimated using recent comparable sales of authenticated coins rather than sensational internet asking prices. For someone searching through an old coin collection, the first step is not to clean the coin. Cleaning can permanently reduce collector value. Harsh chemicals, polishing compounds, abrasive cloths, metal polish, toothpaste, vinegar, and other household substances can damage the original surface. A coin that looks dirty may actually have natural toning or original surfaces that collectors value. Professional graders generally prefer coins that have not been improperly cleaned. The safest approach is to handle the coin by its edges and avoid touching the main surfaces unnecessarily. Finger oils can leave residues. If the coin is potentially valuable, place it in a suitable inert holder or protective flip rather than an unsuitable plastic container that could interact with the metal over time. Photography can help with preliminary identification. Take clear pictures of both sides of the coin under even lighting. Photograph the edge separately. Take a close-up of the date and mint mark. If the coin appears to have an error, photograph the suspected error from multiple angles. Include a ruler or measurement reference when appropriate, but do not manipulate the coin in ways that could cause damage. A scale capable of measuring to at least hundredths of a gram can be useful. A normal 1973 cent should be around 3.11 grams. A significant deviation should encourage further investigation. Diameter can also be measured with digital calipers, although collectors should avoid scratching the coin with hard measuring tools. The known standard is approximately 19 millimeters. Metal testing can be useful when performed correctly. Because normal 1973 cents are copper alloy coins, a suspected silver-colored example deserves attention. However, color alone is not enough. A coin can become silver-looking because of chemical exposure, plating, environmental changes, or other causes. A genuine wrong planchet error has a specific combination of weight, diameter, composition, and striking characteristics. A 1973 cent struck on a dime planchet would be particularly interesting because the cent design was intended for a larger copper planchet. The resulting coin can be smaller than a normal cent, and portions of the design can be missing because the dies were designed for the larger cent blank. This is the type of unusual combination that can make a coin genuinely scarce and valuable. Documented examples show that authenticated wrong planchet pieces can bring significant prices. A collector should also pay attention to the edge. A standard 1973 cent has a plain edge, meaning it does not have the reeded edge found on a dime or quarter. If a supposed 1973 cent appears to have reeding, that is an important clue, although it must be carefully investigated. A coin can be altered after minting, so the presence of unusual edge characteristics is not by itself proof of a mint error. The historical importance of Abraham Lincoln is one reason Lincoln cents remain among the most collected United States coins. Lincoln's portrait was introduced on the cent in 1909, making it the first circulating United States coin to feature a real historical person. The design became one of the most recognizable pieces of American currency. The memorial reverse introduced in 1959 provided another important chapter in Lincoln cent history. The reverse shows the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. Within the memorial is a tiny depiction of Lincoln's statue, although it can be difficult to see without magnification. This design remained in circulation for nearly 5 decades. By 1973, millions of Americans were using Lincoln cents in everyday transactions. These coins passed through stores, banks, vending machines, cash registers, and households. Because so many were produced and circulated, most surviving examples are not rare. The collectible interest comes from the exceptional examples rather than from the date alone. This is an important lesson for anyone who discovers a 1973 cent today. A coin's age does not automatically make it rare. A 1973 cent is more than 50 years old, but billions were produced. A common coin can survive in enormous numbers. A rare coin can sometimes be much younger, if only a few examples were made or if a particular era occurred very infrequently. Collectors therefore consider rarity, condition, demand, and provenance. Rarity means how difficult the coin is to find. Condition means how well preserved it is. Demand means how strongly collectors want that particular coin. Provenance means the documented history of ownership or sale, which can be especially valuable for major rarities. An authenticated coin from a respected grading service can be easier to sell because buyers have more confidence in its authenticity and grade. PCGS and NGC are among the best-known grading services used by collectors. Their holders, labels, population reports, and auction databases provide useful information for comparing coins. NGC's database includes information on grades, census counts, price information, and auction-related data for the 1973 cent. The difference between a raw coin and a certified coin can be especially important for suspected errors. A seller may describe a coin as rare error because it looks unusual, but buyers want evidence. Certification can determine whether the feature is actually a mint error, whether the coin has been altered, and what grade it deserves. For an extremely unusual coin, authentication can be worth considering even if the grading fee is significant. A major wrong planchette error, dramatic multiple strike, major off-center strike, or other spectacular mint error may deserve professional examination. The potential value should justify the expense. Collectors should also be cautious about fake error coins. Modern technology makes it possible to alter coins, add mint marks, manipulate surfaces, remove metal, plate coins, and create artificial appearances. A supposed error that appears too good to be true deserves careful scrutiny. One of the simplest rules in coin collecting is to never assume value from an internet headline. A headline might say 1973 penny worth $281 million, but the collector should immediately ask, who bought it? Who sold it? Where was the auction? What was the lot number? Was the transaction completed? Which grading service authenticated the coin? What grade did it receive? What exact error did it have? Is there a public auction record? Is the figure an asking price, or a realized price? These questions separate serious numismatic research from viral content. A genuine market value is normally supported by comparable transactions. If an identical, or closely comparable coin has sold repeatedly for similar amounts, those results provide useful evidence. One unusual sale can be an outlier, and one enormous asking price proves almost nothing. The 1973 Philadelphia cents documented PCGS auction record of $3,960 for an MS-67 plus red specimen is a useful example of how condition rarity can transform an otherwise common date. The coin remains a common date in general, but extremely high-grade examples can become much scarcer. The 1973 cent presents another interesting collecting challenge. PCGS notes that the San Francisco issue can be difficult to find in very high grades because of planchette problems, contact marks, and alloy-related appearance issues. PCGS also reports an auction record of $3,360 for a 1973 example. The 1973 D cent has its own error market. Documented auction results include off-center strikes, defective planchets, struck-through errors, and brokerage errors. The examples demonstrate that dramatic minting mistakes can create premiums even though the date itself was produced in billions. A coin collector examining a 1973 cent should therefore make a distinction between three broad categories: an ordinary circulated coin, a high-grade normal coin, and an authentic mint era, or major variety. The first may be worth only a small amount above face value. The second can be worth considerably more if it achieves an exceptional certified grade. The third can range from a modest premium to thousands or potentially much more depending on the era. The phrase "worth big money" should always be connected to a specific characteristic. A normal circulated 1973 cent is not a fortune. A rare certified era can be a significant collectible. A unique combination of major era, exceptional condition, and documented provenance can command a strong price. But the market has to establish that price through actual buyers. If a 1973 cent is found in a family collection, the owner should preserve it rather than immediately sell it to the first person who offers money. Research several comparable sales. Consult a reputable coin dealer or numismatist. If the coin appears to have a major error, consider professional certification. The coin's weight should be recorded before any cleaning or alteration. If it is exactly, or approximately 3.11 grams and 19 millimeters, it is consistent with the normal specifications. If the weight is dramatically different, further research is justified. The composition should also be considered. A genuine 1973 cent normally contains 95% copper and 5% zinc. The date itself should remain visible on a valuable era coin whenever possible. An error that removes the date can be harder to identify and may be less desirable than an equally dramatic error with the date intact. Collectors want to know exactly what they are buying. A dramatic error can also be more valuable when it is easy to explain visually. For example, a coin struck 50% off-center with the full date clearly visible can be understood immediately. A complicated die variety may require specialist knowledge. Both can be collectible, but market demand may differ. The size of an off-center error matters. A coin that is only slightly displaced may not be particularly dramatic. A coin with a large portion of the design missing can be much more impressive. However, the exact percentage is not the only factor. The position of the date, mint mark, denomination, and overall design can influence desirability. Multiple strike errors can be even more dramatic. When a coin is struck more than once in different positions, the resulting design can look like several overlapping Lincoln portraits or memorial buildings. Such coins can attract significant attention from error collectors. Brokerage errors are another specialized category. A brokerage can occur when a previously struck coin becomes adhered to a die and then impresses part of its design onto another planchette. Depending on the stage of the error, the resulting coin can show a mirror image design or unusual raised and incuse features. Documented 1973D brokerage examples demonstrate that these errors can be valuable. A coin that appears to have a doubled image should not immediately be called a doubled die. The collector should examine the shape of the doubling. True doubled dies usually show specific characteristics related to the creation of the die, while machine doubling often produces flatter, shelf-like secondary impressions. Expert attribution is recommended when a suspected doubled die could be valuable. The same principle applies to mint marks. A strange D or S may be the result of damage, corrosion, die wear, or tooling rather than a rare mint mark variety. A collector should compare the coin with established references. The market value of a coin also changes over time. Auction prices are historical records, not guarantees of future selling prices. A coin that sold for $1,000 several years ago might bring more or less today depending on demand, grade, eye appeal, market conditions, and the availability of competing examples. This is particularly relevant when discussing current value. Current value should ideally be based on recent sales, dealer asking prices, auction records, and current price guides. PCGS and NGC provide useful resources, while auction houses provide realized prices. A random social media post is much weaker evidence. The 1973 Lincoln cent is therefore a fascinating coin precisely because it demonstrates the difference between rarity and appearance. Billions were made, but unusual production errors can be scarce. A coin can look strange without being valuable, and a coin can look ordinary, but be valuable because of a rare variety or exceptional grade. For a YouTube audience, one of the most useful messages is that collectors should inspect their change carefully, but should not believe every viral valuation. A 1973 penny could potentially be worth much more than 1 cent if it contains a genuine error, is in exceptional condition, or has a recognized variety. But $281 million is not a verified market value for a standard 1973 Lincoln cent based on the documented records available. A viewer who finds a 1973 cent should first check the date, mint mark, weight, diameter, color, condition, and obvious minting characteristics. Then the coin should be compared against reliable references. If there is a suspected major error, professional authentication is the next logical step. The coin's symbolism is also worth discussing. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln represents one of the most recognizable figures in American history. The inscriptions "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" reflect long-standing themes in United States coinage. The memorial reverse connects the denomination to the nation's capital and to Lincoln's historical legacy. E pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one, appears above the memorial. The word 1 cent clearly identifies the denomination. United States of America identifies the issuing nation. The date 1973 tells collectors the year of manufacture. The mint mark, when present, identifies the facility where the coin was struck. These design elements provide a visual checklist for identification. On the obverse, inspect Lincoln's portrait, the date, Liberty, and "In God We Trust." On the reverse, inspect the memorial, "E pluribus unum", 1 cent, and United States of America. Compare the lettering with known examples before concluding that something is unusual. The 1973 cent is also historically interesting because it sits near the end of the classic copper Lincoln Memorial cent era. The traditional copper composition continued through 1982, although 1982 itself became a major transition year with different compositions and weights. The 1973 coin therefore belongs to a period collectors often associate with the classic copper cent. The copper content can sometimes have a value above face value based on metal prices, but collectors should not confuse theoretical metal value with numismatic value. The collector market is driven primarily by rarity, condition, errors, varieties, and demand. The exact value of any individual circulated coin depends on its condition and market. If a 1973 cent is heavily worn, scratched, corroded, or stained, it will usually be worth much less than a pristine example. A coin that has been polished may appear shiny, but can actually be less desirable to collectors, because the original surface has been altered. Natural red color can be especially important on copper cents. Professional grading services use color designations such as red, red-brown, and brown. A high-grade red example can command a substantial premium over a lower-grade brown coin of the same date. A coin's luster is also important. Original mint luster can give an uncirculated cent a vibrant appearance. Artificially polished surfaces often look unnaturally bright and may show hairline scratches. Experienced graders can distinguish many forms of alteration, which is another reason professional grading matters for expensive coins. The 1973 cent deserves special attention from collectors looking for condition rarities. PCGS has noted the difficulty of finding high-grade examples because many San Francisco cents from the year have contact marks and planchette problems. The 1973 D cent also provides an excellent example of why error collecting is different from ordinary date collecting. Recent documented auction results include a defective planchette example at $119, a 4% misaligned obverse die at $73, a 50% off center strike at $79, and a late-stage brokerage at $1,020. These results show that the market can reward dramatic and authentic minting mistakes, but the values are nowhere near $281 million. The correct way to describe a potentially valuable 1973 error is therefore something like, this coin may have a significant premium if the unusual feature is confirmed as a genuine mint error. That is more accurate than promising that every 1973 penny is worth a fortune. Collectors should also be aware that online marketplaces sometimes contain extremely high asking prices. An online listing at $281 million is not equivalent to a $281 million sale. The difference is fundamental. In numismatics, realized auction prices and documented transactions are much more useful than unsupported asking prices. If a seller claims a coin is worth $281 million, ask for the evidence. A legitimate claim should identify the exact coin, certification number, grading service, auction house, auction date, lot number, and completed sale. Without that evidence, the figure should be regarded as speculation or marketing rather than established market value. The 1973 Lincoln cent is still worth examining because genuine errors do exist. The collector should not throw away an unusual example merely because the date is common. At the same time, the collector should not assume that every strange feature represents $1 million mistake. The strongest candidates for further examination are coins with unusual weights, major off-center strikes, wrong planchette appearances, multiple strikes, dramatic brockages, major die breaks, recognized double dies, or other characteristics that clearly occurred during mint production. The weakest candidates are coins with scratches, dents, gouges, polishing, discoloration from chemicals, flattened edges, drilled holes, glue, paint, plating, or other obvious post-mint damage. Such damage can make a coin look unusual, but generally does not create the same collector premium. A collector can begin with a simple inspection under magnification. Examine the date first. Then inspect the mint mark. Examine the letters and numbers for doubling. Look around the rim for clips or abnormalities. Inspect the entire coin for evidence that the planchette was improperly formed. Examine the edge. Finally, weigh and measure the coin. The coin should not be cleaned during this process. Cleaning can remove evidence that specialists need to examine and can reduce the coin's desirability. The next step is comparison. Compare the suspected coin with normal 1973 examples from the same mint. If possible, compare it with authenticated examples of the suspected error. The closer the match, the stronger the case for professional examination. The next step is authentication. If the coin potentially has substantial value, a professional grading service can provide an opinion on authenticity and condition. For major errors, specialized error attribution can be particularly useful. Once authenticated, the owner can look for comparable sales. Search for coins with the same date, mint mark, error type, approximate grade, and color designation. The more closely the comparison matches, the more useful the price evidence becomes. This process prevents a common mistake: comparing an ordinary 1973 cent with a spectacularly rare 1973 error, and assuming the ordinary coin has the same value. The same principle applies to grade. A 1973 cent graded MS 67 Plus red is not comparable to a heavily circulated example. The certified grade reflects preservation and quality, and even a single grade point at the highest levels can make a significant difference. PCGS's documented $3,960 auction record for a 1973 Philadelphia MS 67 Plus red cent illustrates the premium associated with exceptional condition. NGC's data similarly shows that certified population numbers become much smaller at the upper grades, illustrating how conditioned rarity can emerge even for a coin that was originally struck in enormous quantities. The 1973 Lincoln cent, therefore, has several layers of collecting interest. At the basic level, it is a historic United States 1-cent coin. At the next level, collectors may seek specific mint marks and high-grade examples. At another level, specialists examine varieties and die characteristics. At the highest level, error collectors search for spectacular mistakes such as wrong planchette strikes, major off-centers, brockages, multiple strikes, and dramatic die breaks. The coin's value can therefore range from approximately face value for a common worn example to substantially higher amounts for rare and authenticated pieces. Some high-grade or major error examples can reach hundreds or thousands of dollars, and documented special errors can go considerably higher. But the $281 million figure should not be stated as a confirmed current market value. The most exciting part of coin collecting is not necessarily finding a coin worth millions. It is discovering something unusual, researching it, and learning how it was made. A common coin can become historically fascinating when it contains a genuine production mistake. The story behind the error can sometimes be as interesting as the price. A 1973 cent that appears normal may have passed through countless hands. It may have been used to purchase a small item at a store in the 1970s. It could have spent decades in circulation before entering a jar, bank roll, family collection, or coin dealer's inventory. A genuine mint error could have survived unnoticed for decades before someone recognized its significance. That possibility is what makes searching old cents so interesting. The key information for a normal 1973 Philadelphia Lincoln cent can be summarized directly from established references. Denomination 1 cent, date 1973, Philadelphia Mint, no mint mark, approximately 3.11 grams, approximately 19 millimeters, plain edge, 95% copper and 5% zinc, and a business strike mintage of 3,728,245,000. For the Denver issue, the D mint mark identifies the Denver Mint, and the total business strike production was 3,549,576,588. The San Francisco business strike mintage was 317,177,295, with additional proof production. These production numbers are important because they demonstrate that scarcity must come from something more specific than simply being dated 1973. A coin struck in the billions is unlikely to be rare merely because it is old. The special feature must be identified. For example, an ordinary 1973 cent with circulation where may have very little numismatic premium. A brilliant high-grade example may be worth considerably more. A certified major error may be worth much more again. A spectacular and extremely rare error with strong provenance could command a substantial collector price. This is why a collector should never give a definitive value before identifying the exact coin. 1973 penny is not enough information. The mint mark, grade, color, variety, error, and authentication all matter. If a coin is advertised as a $281 million 1973 penny, the first question should be whether the coin is actually different from the standard issue. If it is a normal 1973 cent, the $281 million claim is unsupported by the documented market evidence. If it is a major authenticated error, the coin should be identified by its exact error and compared with actual auction results. For educational purposes, it is better to say that $281 million is a sensational claimed figure rather than a verified value. That wording allows collectors to understand why the claim is circulating without misleading them into believing that every 1973 penny has that value. The history of the Lincoln cent itself is much more reliable than sensational valuation claims. Victor David Brenner's Lincoln portrait became one of the most famous coin designs in the world. Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial Reverse then created a second iconic chapter in the cent's history. The 1973 issue sits directly within that long-running tradition. The coin's small size does not diminish its historical significance. Millions of people handled Lincoln cents every day, making them one of the most familiar pieces of American currency. The 1973 cent was part of ordinary American life during an era of economic change, technological development, and major cultural events. Today, collectors can use modern tools to investigate these coins in ways that earlier generations could not. Digital scales, high-resolution cameras, microscopes, online auction archives, population reports, and professional grading services make it possible to examine tiny details and compare them with thousands of other coins. But technology also makes misinformation easier to spread. A photograph of a strange-looking coin can be accompanied by an exaggerated valuation, and viewers may share the claim without checking the source. The responsible collector should separate the fascinating possibility of a rare error from unsupported financial promises. A $281 million price would represent an extraordinary event in the coin market. Such a transaction would require overwhelming documentation. It would almost certainly involve a famous rarity, exceptional provenance, a major auction house or private transaction, and extensive public numismatic attention. A normal 1973 cent does not fit that description. The documented records available for 1973 cents provide a much more realistic picture. High-grade regular examples can reach several $1,000s, while major authenticated errors can also bring substantial premiums. For example, the PCGS auction record for the regular 1973 Philadelphia issue is $3,960 at MS67 plus red, while documented 1973D errors include a $1,020 late-stage brokerage, and other error sales in the tens or hundreds of dollars. A wrong planchette error can be much more valuable, with published reports of a 1973 cent struck on a dime planchette reaching $26,400. Such a coin is fundamentally different from an ordinary 1973 penny because the planchette itself is wrong and the error occurred during production. This range demonstrates why collectors should avoid assigning a single value to 1973 penny errors. There are many types of errors, and each has its own rarity and market. The best approach is to identify the exact error first and value it second. If the coin has no obvious error, condition becomes especially important. A circulated 1973 cent with significant wear is not comparable to a pristine red example graded at the top of the scale. If the coin is in exceptional condition, professional grading may be worthwhile. If the coin has a major error, the error itself may be more important than the grade, although high grade can increase the value further. A dramatic error in mint condition can be particularly desirable. If the coin has unusual color, composition, or weight, do not attempt to scrape, polish, bend, or test it with destructive methods. A specialist can perform non-destructive tests and determine whether the unusual appearance is genuine. The collector should also preserve any old documentation. If the coin came from a family collection, estate, original mint packaging, old coin album, or documented collection, that history can sometimes help establish provenance. The 1973 Lincoln cent is therefore not simply a 1-cent coin. It is a piece of American monetary history, a product of the Lincoln cent tradition, an example of 1970s United States coin production, and potentially a fascinating era coin subject. Its normal specifications are well documented, its mintages are known, and its auction records provide a realistic framework for understanding its market. The most important fact for anyone holding one is this: do not assume that a 1973 date alone makes the coin extremely valuable, and do not assume that an online $281 million claim is an established market price. Examine the actual coin. Look at the date. Look at the mint mark. Look at the weight. Look at the diameter. Look at the edge. Look for off-center striking. Look for a wrong planchet. Look for a genuine doubled die. Look for die cracks, die chips, cuds, brokerage, multiple strikes, clips, struck through areas, and other recognized mint errors. Then compare the coin with authenticated examples and documented sales. If the coin appears ordinary, it is probably an ordinary 1973 cent. If it has an unusual feature, that feature should be identified before a value is assigned. If it is a dramatic suspected error, professional authentication can make a major difference. The true appeal of the 1973 Lincoln cent is that billions were made, yet individual coins can still tell different stories. One coin may be heavily worn from decades of circulation. Another may have remained untouched in a collection. Another may have been struck with a production mistake. Another may have survived in exceptional mint condition. Each is physically similar, yet each can have a different collecting significance. For collectors, the search continues because unusual coins can still be found in old collections, inherited jars, coin rolls, estate accumulations, and forgotten boxes. The possibility of discovering a genuine mint error is real, but extraordinary valuations should always be supported by extraordinary evidence. The phrase worth $281 million makes a dramatic headline, but the responsible conclusion is more nuanced. A 1973 Lincoln cent can be worth considerably more than 1 cent when it possesses a genuine and desirable mint error, or exceptional grade. But $281 million is not a verified current market value for the standard 1973 Lincoln cent based on the documented auction and price information available. The known records instead show values ranging from modest premiums for ordinary examples to thousands of dollars for exceptional grades and significant errors, with certain extraordinary wrong planchet pieces reaching much higher levels. That distinction does not make the 1973 penny boring. In fact, it makes the coin more interesting because it teaches one of the central lessons of numismatics. The value is in the details. A tiny difference in weight can matter. A missing mint mark can matter. A displaced design can matter. A wrong planchet can matter. A genuine double die can matter. A spectacular brokerage can matter. An exceptional grade can matter. Original color can matter. Authentication can matter. Provenance can matter. And above all, actual market evidence matters. The 1973 Lincoln Memorial Cent remains a recognizable symbol of American coinage. Its 3.11 gram copper alloy planchet, 19 mm diameter, plain edge, Lincoln portrait, memorial reverse, and 1973 date place it firmly within the classic memorial cent era. Its enormous mintage means that most examples are common, but the existence of genuine mint errors and condition rarities gives collectors a reason to examine individual pieces carefully. So if you have a 1973 1-cent coin, do not throw it away, but also do not immediately believe a sensational valuation. Inspect it carefully. Preserve its surfaces. Record its weight. Identify its mint mark. Photograph both sides and the edge. Compare its characteristics with reliable numismatic references. If you see a genuine-looking major error, have it examined by a qualified specialist or professional grading service. That is how a collector turns an interesting old penny into a properly researched numismatic discovery. The 1973 Lincoln cent may not be a verified $281 million coin, but a genuine rare error from this year can absolutely be worth far more than face value, and the documented market demonstrates that exceptional examples can attract serious collector interest. The real treasure is not the number printed in a viral headline. The real treasure is discovering exactly what the coin is, how it was made, why it is unusual, how rare it actually is, and what knowledgeable collectors have demonstrably paid for comparable examples.